The wind had lost its mind that night. It came roaring down from the high country like a wounded animal, dragging white claws of snow across the plains. You couldn't tell the sky from the earth anymore. Both were the same endless pail, devouring everything that dared to stand upright. Elias Boone leaned into it, his hat pulled low, scarf crusted with ice. His horse, Sage, stumbled under the weight of frozen breath. They had been riding since noon and found nothing but ghosts, fence posts buried to their necks, a wagon overturned and half swallowed by the drifts, the prairie erased beneath the storm's wide hand. He told himself he was looking for shelter. Truth was, he was just trying not to stop. When a man stops out here, the cold finds him quick, and the memories quicker. It had been 3 winters since Elias left the Ashford Range, 3 winters since they'd called him thief and liar. He could still see the ranch foreman's face, slick with righteousness, the sheriff's hand on his shoulder like judgment itself. He never fought the charge. A man alone in the West doesn't win against a name like Ashford. He just rides on. Now he was a shadow moving through the storm, too proud to die, too tired to live. Then, something caught his eye. A dark mound near the edge of a fallen pine, half hidden by snow. At first, he thought it was another carcass, a deer or a coyote laid low by the wind. But as he rode closer, the shape grew human. He dismounted, boots sinking deep into the drift. The wind screamed in his ears. Brushing away the frost, he found a woman's face beneath, pale as paper, lips gone blue, lashes glittering with ice. For a moment he just stared. She looked like she'd fallen from the sky itself, some frozen spirit from a story told by old campfire tongues. He hesitated, not because he didn't care, but because care had cost him everything before. Then, without another thought, he lifted her into his arms. "She's breathing," he muttered to himself, as if saying it aloud could keep it true. Sage snorted, uneasy, but allowed the weight of them both. The storm didn't let up. It clawed and pushed as Elias rode, each gust whispering doubt, "She'll die anyway. So will you." But something in him, the last ember of decency maybe, burned too stubborn to let go. After what felt like hours, he spotted a shack through the blur, a crooked line shack used by old ranch hands. The roof sagged, but smoke stains on the stone chimney promised it once held fire. He shouldered the door open. Snow spilled in behind him. Inside, the air was bitter, thick with the smell of dust and mice. A rusted kettle hung over a dead hearth. He set her down on a pile of old burlap, struck a match with trembling fingers, and fed the flame with whatever scraps he could find. Splintered chair legs, broken beams, even his own saddle roll. The fire caught. Orange light bloomed against the gray walls, chasing shadows like frightened animals. He stripped the wet coat from her shoulders, careful as if undressing a secret. Beneath, her dress was fine, too fine for these parts. Silk lining, pearl buttons. A ring glimmered on her hand. Not a wanderer then. Not a ranch hand's wife. Whoever she was, she didn't belong in a blizzard like this. He wrapped her in his blanket and held her close enough for warmth to pass between them. Her skin was cold, but not gone. After a long while, her lips parted with a breath that sounded like a prayer. "Clara," she whispered. Elias frowned. "You got a last name, Miss Clara?" No answer. Only the fire's crackle and the wind outside beating its wild fists against the boards. He sat back and watched the light play across her face. Her features were fine-boned, her hair the color of chestnut bark after rain. She looked clean, untouched by the dirt of life he knew too well. He turned away, guilt pressing at him. What business did a man like him have saving someone like her? Maybe this was punishment, he thought, the Lord sending him another chance to fail. The night stretched long. The wind sang through every crack in the walls. He dozed and woke by turns, checking her pulse, feeding the fire, whispering nonsense just to keep his voice from rusting. Sometime near dawn, the blizzard eased. The storm's howl softened into a tired hush. Snowflakes drifted lazily past the window, gentle as falling ash. Clara stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, gray as a winter river, sharp despite the weakness in her body. For a long moment, she just looked at him, confused but calm. Where am I?" "A line shack out near the foothills," he said quietly. "Found you in the snow." She tried to sit up. He caught her before she fell. Their eyes met, his rough and wind-burned, hers wide and trembling. "You saved me," she whispered. "Reckon so," he said, though his voice was unsure. "Or maybe you just weren't ready to be taken yet." She smiled faintly, and something in that smile thawed a part of him he thought long dead. Still, he turned his gaze back to the fire. "Best rest. Roads are gone till morning." As she drifted off again, he let his guard slip enough to watch her. The light painted her in shades of gold and shadow. And he thought, not for the first time, how strange it is that salvation sometimes wears a stranger's face. Outside, dawn crawled slow over the white horizon. The storm had left everything quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like confession. Elias stepped out for a moment, boots crunching in the snow, eyes searching the plains. The world looked reborn, blank and clean, as if waiting for someone to write over it. He stood there, breath clouding in the light, and whispered into the emptiness. "Don't know who you are, Clara, but maybe you're the reason I didn't lie down and die." Inside, the fire crackled on, the only sound for miles. The smoke rose steady, straight into the cold morning air, like a promise neither of them had yet spoken aloud. The storm had passed, but the world it left behind was strange and new, a white desert that gleamed beneath a shy sun. Every fence, every tree, every stone wore the same cloak of silence. Only the crows dared speak, black flecks swirling against the brightness. Inside the shack, the fire had burned down to coals. Elias stirred it with the tip of his boot, coaxing out the last embers. Clara was awake, sitting up now, her blanket drawn close. She watched him like someone trying to read a man's history from the way he moved. "You should eat," he said, handing her a crust of hardtack and a strip of dried beef. She took it, though her fingers trembled. "And you?" He shrugged. "Had worse meals. Had colder nights." For a long while, neither spoke. The quiet between them was heavy, but not unkind. Finally, Clara said softly, "You could have left me out there. No one would have known." Elias didn't look up. "I would have." There was a truth in that simple line that made her throat tighten. He wasn't a man of speeches. His words came slow, shaped by weather and regret. But what he said, he meant. By midday, they stepped back into the world. The sky stretched wide, a blue so fragile it looked ready to shatter. The snow crunched beneath their boots, their breath rising in white ghosts. Elias led the way, eyes searching for the wagon trail buried somewhere beneath the drifts. Clara followed close, clutching the borrowed coat he'd given her, a heavy, worn thing that still smelled faintly of horse and tobacco. It hung off her shoulders like armor, and she drew it tighter whenever the wind dared whisper. "Where we headed?" she asked. "Nearest town's Silver Bend," he said. "Half a day's walk if the sun holds." "And after that?" "After that," Elias said quietly, "you can decide where your road runs." She watched the back of his broad figure, the slow, deliberate stride of a man used to carrying his own weight and everyone else's. Something in him spoke of deep loneliness, the kind that doesn't ask to be pitied. The silence between them began to soften. She caught him glancing back once or twice, checking her pace. When she stumbled on a buried branch, his hand shot out, steadying her without a word. His touch was rough, but careful, like he was afraid she might break. By the time they reached Silver Bend, the sun was sinking behind the hills, bleeding red through the frost. Smoke curled from chimneys, and the smell of stew and pine smoke drifted on the air. Elias led her to May Hensley's Inn, a squat, warm building with a lantern swaying over the door. Inside, the air was thick with chatter and wood smoke. A piano played something mournful from the saloon next door. May herself appeared from behind the counter, a stout woman in a shawl, her eyes sharp as nails. "Well, I'll be," she said, squinting, "if it ain't Elias Boone. Thought the wind took you years ago." Elias dipped his head slightly. "Good to see you too, May. You're colder than a church pew in January. And who's this fine lady?" "Found her in the snow," he said simply. May's brows lifted, but she didn't pry. "You always did have a way of finding trouble in pretty packages." She winked at Clara. "Come on then, I'll get you two something hot." Later, by the fire in the small parlor, Clara warmed her hands around a mug of coffee. Elias sat across from her, quiet as ever. The orange glow made his face look carved from stone, hard lines softened only by the tired kindness in his eyes. "Folks talk about you," she said softly. He looked up, wary. "What kind of talk?" "The kind that says you once worked for the Ashford Range. That you were accused of stealing cattle." He didn't flinch, only leaned back, gaze lost in the fire. "Talk's the only thing that don't freeze out here," he said. "And it spreads faster than truth." She hesitated. "Did you do it?" "No," he said. "One word. Heavy. Final." "I believe you." He looked at her then, really looked. The flicker of firelight danced across her features, and for a heartbeat, something shifted in his chest. "Why?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Because you came back for me in a storm no sane man would have ridden through. A thief doesn't waste his warmth that way." He said nothing more. But later, when she coughed in her room, he was at her door in seconds with hot water and a rag, pretending it was duty, not care. That night, Silver Bend slept under a hard moon. The wind had settled into sighs, and the inn creaked like an old ship at anchor. Clara couldn't sleep. She slipped downstairs to find Elias still awake by the hearth, boots off, staring into the coals. He didn't move when she approached. Just said, "Couldn't rest either?" She shook her head. "The storm's still in my bones." He nodded. "Storms do that. They leave quiet behind, but it's the kind that don't let you breathe." She sat across from him. The silence stretched again, not awkward, just full of everything they weren't ready to say. "Elias," she began carefully, "if someone wronged you, would you forgive them?" He met her eyes. "Depends. Did they mean it, or were they just scared?" "Does it matter?" "It does to me." Something passed between them then, a flicker of truth neither could name. She wanted to tell him who she really was, that her last name was Ashford, that her ranch, his old home, was now burning under the hands of men who betrayed her. But she couldn't. Not yet. Not until she knew what kind of man he truly was. Instead, she said quietly, "You should rest. Tomorrow we'll ask more of you." He smiled, small and weary. "Tomorrow always does." As she turned to go, her hand brushed his shoulder. Just a light touch, but it carried a tremor that neither pretended not to feel. By dawn, the peace was broken. A rider thundered into Silver Bend, Sheriff Lyle Cutter, dusted white from the cold, his badge dull beneath the morning sun. He dismounted fast, shouting for May. "Miss Ashford," he called. "Clara Ashford's gone missing." Her men turned against her, burned part of the range, took over the house. Elias froze where he stood. The name hit like a bullet. Ashford. He turned slowly toward Clara. She stood near the stairs, pale, her hands trembling as the sheriff's words sank through the air like lead. Elias's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening with the weight of recognition. She met his gaze, guilt and fear flickering like the dying fire between them. And in that heavy silence, all warmth fled the room. Through. Elias stood still, his face unreadable, while the sheriff's words scattered through the inn like startled birds. Clara's secret, the one she had buried beneath her false widow's smile, was no longer hidden. Sheriff Cutter removed his hat, glancing between them. The Ashford Range's in trouble. Her foreman turned against her. "They say Miss Clara's dead, but I'd wager she's just lost in this damned snow." "You seen her?" The silence stretched. Elias's gaze found hers across the room. No one else seemed to exist. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, too calm. "She's right here." May's gasp broke the air. The sheriff froze mid-step, confusion flickering across his weathered face. Clara didn't move, her lips trembling. Elias turned to her fully. "You could have told me," he said. "I wanted to," she whispered, "but I needed to know what kind of man you were." He let out a low, humorless laugh. "And what kind of man am I, Miss Ashford?" "The kind who saves someone without knowing their worth," she said softly. "The kind this land forgot." For a long moment, neither of them looked away. In her eyes, he saw not deceit, but the ache of a woman who'd carried too much pride for too long. In his, she saw a man still bound by ghosts he didn't deserve. Finally, the sheriff cleared his throat. "We ride at dawn," he said. "If we don't stop Keaton and his boys, they'll burn what's left of your ranch." Elias looked to Clara. "You goin'?" She met his stare. "Steady now. It's my land, Mr. Boone. My family's name. I won't let men of greed rewrite it." He nodded once. "Then you'll need someone who knows how to read the land they're trying to take." The ride. The sun bled red across the horizon as they rode, 3 figures cutting through the pale fields, hooves muffled by snow. The world seemed to hold its breath. Clara rode with her back straight, her coat snapping in the wind. Every mile closer to the ranch stripped away the fear in her face, leaving only quiet resolve. Elias rode beside her, silent as ever, but his eyes scanned the plains with the wary grace of a man who's known betrayals sent before. "Why'd you come?" she asked after a long while, her voice nearly lost to the wind. He didn't look at her. "Because I ain't ridin' away from ghosts anymore." She smiled faintly. "Not all ghosts want you gone." He gave a slow nod. "Then maybe it's time I stopped runnin' from the ones that stayed." The ranch. The Ashford Range rose from the snow like a scar, black smoke twisting from its burned stables, fences splintered, the big house looming behind a wall of armed men. Vern Keaton stood at the gate, his hat low, coat open to the cold. He'd been foreman once, a man who'd run the ranch in Clara's absence, and the same one who had framed Elias years ago. When he saw Boone among the riders, he grinned through yellow teeth. "Well, if it ain't the ghost himself. You comin' to beg forgiveness, Boone?" Elias dismounted, calm and steady. The snow crunched under his boots. "I came to see a man try to talk his way out of hell." The sheriff's men spread out, rifles drawn but low. The air thickened, tension humming like a wire ready to snap. Clara rode forward slowly, her voice ringing clear. "Vern Keaton, you swore loyalty to my family. And now you torch our land." He spat into the snow. "You're a name on paper, Clara. I been the one runnin' this range. You just inherited it." She stared down at him. "Then I inherit the right to end it." Quiet confrontation. There was no shouting, no shootout, just the stillness before truth. Elias stepped closer until he stood face to face with Keaton. "Tell em, Vern. Tell em who really drove off those cattle. Who branded em new in the dark while I slept 2 miles away." Keaton's grin faltered. "You got no proof." Elias's eyes didn't waver. Proof's just the name folks give when they're too scared to believe the truth. For a long beat, nothing moved. Then one of Keaton's men shifted uneasily, lowering his gun. "He's tellin' the truth, Vern," the man muttered. "We all knew it." Keaton turned, eyes wide. "You keep your mouth." But the sheriff was already there, iron hand gripping his shoulder. "It's over," Cutter said flatly. "You'll hang for the fires and the theft." The men began to back away, guilt spilling through the ranks like thawing water. The rebellion broke, not with bullets, but with silence. Clara's shoulders trembled as the weight left her. Elias just stood there, watching smoke curl into the gray sky, watching years of exile drift away like it never belonged to him. The return of warmth. By dusk, the ranch was quiet again. Snow fell soft, covering the black scars of fire. The men were gone, the sheriff riding to town with his prisoners. Only Elias and Clara remained by the barn, fixing the broken fence together in the dying light. Her hands were raw, but she smiled anyway. "You didn't have to stay." "I did," he said. "Didn't know it, till I was already here." She looked at him then, the soft pink glow of sunset on her face. "The papers can clear your name now." "I'll see to it." Elias shook his head slowly. "Don't need papers. Just peace." He looked out over the fields, the same ones that once cast him out. "I used to think land like this didn't care what kind of man you were. But I was wrong," he said. "It remembers who stood tall when the wind came." She stepped closer, close enough for the breath between them to warm. "Then stay," she whispered. "Help me rebuild it." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. That small, wordless act said everything: forgiveness, promise, belonging. Final reflection. Weeks passed. The snow melted. Calves were born. Fences mended. The ranch began to breathe again. From the porch one morning, Clara watched Elias leading a young horse across the paddock, the light catching the worn brim of his hat. He moved like the land itself, steady, unhurried, finally home. When he looked up and saw her watching, he tipped his hat with a smile that carried a lifetime's worth of quiet gratitude. That night, as the sun fell behind the distant hills, Clara found him by the fence-line. They stood together, side by side, watching the last light fade into the earth. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The silence between them was no longer heavy, it was full. Closing narration, to the viewer. They say storms change the land, but truth is, they change the people first. Out here, mercy don't come loud. It comes in small hands that light a fire, in eyes that forgive what words never could. So if you ever find yourself lost beneath a sky too cold to name, remember this: sometimes the soul you save ain't the stranger in the snow. Sometimes it's your own. And with that, the wind carried away the last smoke of winter, leaving only the sound of two hearts steady as hooves on the thawing earth.